We can use Configuration Manager to manage the compliancy settings of our devices. One of the things that we need to create before we can manage the compliancy of our devices is a thing called a configuration item. And a configuration item, in all essence, is really just a setting. So in order to create our configuration items, we come into our Asset and Compliance workspace. Then what we do is we come into our Compliance Settings node. Within our Compliance Settings node, we come to Configuration Items. Once we're in our configuration items node itself, to create a configuration item, we just right click and we create a configuration item. But as you can see, we can import it from another location or from a file that we already have. So let's create our configuration item. That's going to bring us into a wizard. So when we get into the wizard, one of the things we have to do, as with most things in Configuration Manager, is we do have to give this setting a name. And what I'm going to call mine is I'm going to call mine Validate Remote Desktop is enabled. We're going to come down, we're going to create some categories just to make things easier to search for if we wish to. So we'll just come to our categories, and in the case of our categories, what we'll do is we'll put that under Client Settings and we'll select OK. We're happy with all the other settings. So the setting for devices managed by the Config Manager client, we're going to go for Windows Desktop and Servers, Custom. We're not going to bother down here for settings for devices managed without the Config Manager client. Everything has a Config Manager client. So what we'll do at this point here is we'll select Next. When we select Next, we'll then specify our operating system. So in the case of our operating systems or supported platforms, I'm going to just leave everything selected. And we'll select Next. Then what we need to do is we now need to create the setting. So to create the setting, what we do is select our New button. That'll bring us into a wizard. So what we now need to do is we now need to specify the setting, and I'm going to go for a registry value. And we're going to do that just by browsing through. And what I want to do at this point here is I want to connect to a different computer to pull in that setting. And I'm going to do that against lon-DC1, as that is my reference device. We'll connect through, and as you can see, we've now connected through to the registry on that device. We're going to come for HKey local machine. Within HKey local machine, we're then going to go to System. And then within System, what we're going to do is we're going to come to Current Control Set. And within Current Control Set, what we're looking for is we're just going to look for the terminal server settings. So we'll come to Current Control Set. We're going to come to Control. And then within Control, what we're going to do is we're just going to find Terminal Server. So scroll that down towards the T's. And what we should see here, we've got Terminal Server. So we'll highlight Terminal Server now. Now what we want to do at this point here is we just need to specify the registry key that we want to create the config item from. And what I'm doing at this point here is I'm going for the fdeny TS connections. I don't really care what the registry value is set to. I'm creating a config item to control this registry setting. So at this point here, we've selected the registry key that we want to use. And what we're going to do at this point here is we can say select the rule that defines compliance for selected registry value. So the selected registry value must exist on client devices or it must not exist. So we can specify exactly what we want to do at this point. What we're going to do is we're just going to select this registry value must satisfy the following rule if present. So we're happy with it equals 0 at this point here. So we're happy with all of that. So all we're going to do is we're now going to select OK. And then what we've got is we're fairly happy with the name it's given it. We can see the registry key. Not going to bother specifying any of these values at this point here, and all we're going to do is we're just going to select OK. Then we'll select our Next button. In the case of our compliancy rules, what we now need to do is specify compliance rules for this operating system. So we know the value must exist. What we're going to do at this point here is specify this value here, and what we want to know is if we do get non-compliancy, we want to know about it. So what we're going to do is we've got the name. We're validating the desktop is enabled. We can see down here the value that we've put in place. We do have the ability at this point here, if we wish to remediate non-compliant rules when supported. And generally speaking, all registry keys are supported. And we've also got report non-compliance if this setting instance is not found. Now, if we do get non-compliancy, what we want at this point here is we want to know about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to say this is going to be critical. If we can't support somebody because remote desktop is turned off, that then becomes an issue. Now we've done that, we'll just select our OK button. Select our Next button. Read through the summary, we're happy with the summary, select Next. It'll progress through. Once it's progressed through, what we can then do is just close down the wizard. So at this point here, we can now close down, and we've now created a config item. At this point here, we haven't done anything with this config item. What we need to do is we need to create a config baseline and then deploy the baseline out against the devices. But that's for a later demo. This demo purely was looking at how do we create these configuration items. Thank you.